like this question for VPN and the load balancers. So there are two types of load balancer, right? The advanced load balancer RV, they have their own process. The load balancer built in, so that we can take it off like this question. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other question? No?
Varun, there's another question that's about third-party products. So some folks are using Palo Alto network. Some people are using Trend Micro. So how is that accomplished?
Yeah, so this is obviously something that cannot be automated because there are so many different third-party solutions that get integrated with NSX-T. So as far as I'm aware, the migration coordinator does not support automatically getting that configuration over to NSX-T, but I'll let Tuan answer that.
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways to do that, right? So the tool not fully support for the third-party integration yet, so it's in the pipe. Right now, the way to go, and I have customer doing production. They build, let's say you have Checkpoint or Palo Alto in the brownfield. So in V, but to do in T, you're gonna build a second one in T, and then you take the whole configuration, you export it using Verni on our Power CLI, another tool to export your configuration, and then re-import it back to the new one. That's the best way to go and the fastest way to go. Or you can go with some partners. We have partners in the techzone.vmware.com and tell you some other solution with the partner to do that. But that's something we take care of that. We have it in the next coming release, yeah, for the migration coordinator.
Mm-hmm. There's a question for maybe Tuan and Varun. So they were asking, is there any mechanisms for rollback? And the answer would be the migration coordinator actually provides a lot of pre-checks before you, at a lot of times before you can even push forward. So there's a lot of pre-checks in place for the in-place migration.
Yeah, one caveat along with pre-check, right? Before you do migration, make sure your NSX-V is up to date, right? If you want to support, let's say VDS, it is 647 is the requirement, and make sure when you go to the GUI general demo, I just quickly walk through. Make sure on the health check in NSX-V are up and running. You're not going to migrate something it's not yet running in V properly, right? And then after that, the NSX-T, the migration coordinator, before they do the migration, they do the full list of checking, like as you saw on the demo. So, and then you can also do another extra step by exporting the whole configuration, do a check before and after. We call it pre-check and post-check to make sure all the objects has been imported properly, have been migrated properly into NSX-T. Yeah. There are a couple check before and after. Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, rollback built in, but there are strong pre-checks and post-checks, and we've linked a resources site under the resources tab. So if you go there, there are links to VMware documentation on the migration coordinator that talk about what prerequisites do we check for, and also once you're done with the migration, what are the things that you need to go and verify in your new NSX-T environment. So all that is well documented.
Yep. Another question is the customer is using NSX-V only for micro-segmentation. So if the customer moves to NSX-T, do they need to configure the transport zone and the transport node when they're not even using the logical switch in the current setup?
By default, we have the in NSX-T, they create one transpose zone for overlay and one transpose zone for the underlay. That can be taken, but this question depends on the configuration. I cannot see the configuration, how it's been set up in V, so that we can take it offline. But technically, we have the default transpose zone in NSX-T that can be taken care of. Yeah, but again, depends on the configuration, how you set up your V. Yeah, we can take it off like this.
Sure. If the question comes from an SC, please contact us in product management. You can contact us as ask-pmm and ask-nsxpmm@vmware.com. If it's from a customer, go ahead and speak to your SC, and they can reach us in product marketing.
No question. I have one comment, right? So there are a couple caveats in the migration coordinators. So like support VCF, VRA, we already talking about that. So multiple V centers, multiple NSX-V to migrate to the same NSX-T, cross V centers, HCX, you can bring HCX into the picture as well. So then multiple scenario, let's take it offline and we need to see one by one, okay?
Sure. And then there's actually a couple more questions. Let me read them. Is the recommendation to install and configure VMware Identity Manager before migrating to NSX-T?
I can take the VIDM is the authentication. I'm not sure it's support in NSX-V, but yet they're fully utilized in NSX-T. I need to take it off like this question, so that's a good question. But the thing is, it's not part of the migration coordinator where we're talking about today. That's it's kind of our topic, but they're related to Let's take it off.
There's another question about the migration coordinator. It is included in NSX-T. So is the question, is there a separate need for a license for the NSX migration coordinator? And the answer is no. This is installed from your NSX-T. You install the migration coordinator on one VM. There's another question, and I'm not sure I know the acronym. What happens to UDLR after migration?
Yeah, so UDLR and cross vCenter migration in general, it's not supported by the migration coordinator today, right? So that's something we'll add to the migration coordinator along with other cross-site features.
Okay. There is another question is, what is the downtime for a migration
during the process?
Okay. Another question is that
Or my
deploy T1s for tenant separation.
Not for now. So whatever you have in NSX-T and V, sorry, though DLR, there no notion multi-tenancy in V. By the way, to convert it, we could convert what you have. Tenancy does mean you might have different DLR or you might have different NSX-V, and each NSX-V could be a couple of tenants. That I don't think is working right now. I have to double check with. So far, I don't think automatically it should be working. So the way you can go and you can work with the partner, they may have some tool to help for that. But my understanding, no, we don't have that kind of configuration to support. Not yet. That's a good request. Let's take.
So there's a question about running Kubernetes in NSX for vSphere and migrating them to NSX-T. So the Kubernetes that was supported in NSX for vSphere was for Cloud Foundry and OpenStack at the time. So for NSX-T with Kubernetes, it started with 2.51 and going forward. So if you're talking about any legacy Kubernetes clusters, it would be you would want to deploy them on 2.51 and NSX-T 3.0, especially for vSphere 7 with Kubernetes. So you'll want to make sure that they correspond to the right Kubernetes clusters and release. Okay. There's a question about what happens with the firewall rules if you have some VMs on NSX-V and some VMs on NSX-T. So mix VMs on NSX-V and mix VMs on NSX-T. So it looks like they might be running both in parallel, running in both NSX-V and NSX-T in parallel.
Right. Yeah. So it depends on how you got your NSX-T environment installed. If it was using something like the migration coordinator, then the migration coordinator will take care of uh, translating NSX-V firewall rules into the NSX-T equivalent. Whereas if it's a coexist scenario where you have NSX-T deployed separately from NSX-V and you installed NSX-T from the ground up, then you would use whatever mechanism you have for defining your firewall rules, right? So it could be a cloud management platform that you're using. It could be directly using NSX Manager in NSX-T, but it won't be part of the migration process itself.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this may be the last question. I'll need to migrate my customer's NSX-V to NSX-T. However, no new vCenter will be deployed. Do we just use the current vCenter? I'm not sure if you may have answered that.
Yeah.
Which migration method is suitable for my case?
So can I take this question? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Tuan.
Yeah, so that's the demo we did, right? We take the same vCenter in V, we lift it up, and we connect to NSX-T. Now, if you have coexist on vCenter, you want to migrate multiple vCenter into that, or you already have one vCenter in T, that thing we should take it offline. We might have some solution outside of the tool to help, but the tool itself not gonna do that for multiple vCenter to one single NSX-T.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions in the queue, but feel free to ask maybe one last question before we end the webcast at 12 noon.
Yeah, question. So if you migrated, something go wrong, how we fix it, right? Who just asked this? So that's a good question, right? So you do migration, you have the rule like we say web app DB, and you migrate only web app and DB rules is disappear, or someone went in and changed it. So the couple caveats. So the tool not doing the monitoring after the post migration, but the way you can do it two ways. Either you export the config before and after, and then you compare that. You can do an Excel sheet or whatever. You compare before and after how it looks. Or another way you can do with NSX Intelligence. NSX Intelligence, when you hook up with NSX-T, it can monitor all the rules being imported. If someone coming later on and make changes or delete the rules, you can see that. Another way you can do it, hook up with network insight via VRNI or log insight. It detects all the logs, all the things happening, so you know who making changes. Network insight for network things. The other one for other logs, so you can track whatever happening. And then second intelligence is getting more and more improvement, so you can do more monitorings what happening inside your system as well. Yeah. Montreal. So book